Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast shorts. There's no co-host on these shorts episodes. These are now around 2 to 4 minute, sometimes as long as 6 to 10 minute observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 2 to 4 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book your coworker won't stop raving about because it quote-unquote changed their life, but you can't see any difference in their leadership behavior. So how good could that author be? Combat and warfare are two different yet interrelated things. The facts of combat are that the people we ask to engage in combat, almost exclusively young men, are always laying down their lives, not for patriotism or for politics or even for religion. They are laying down their lives for their friends. But it has been a hard road getting to this point of understanding about the nature and the facts of combat in the West, all the way from the Greek way of making war through to the Middle Ages and the long centuries of convincing or conniving young men into conscription. Politicians, generals, civilians, and even families don't really understand why a young man would engage in a practice that they view from their position on reality as dangerous, violent, and, in our postmodern materialistic era, as completely unnecessarily, enthusiastically. But politicians rely on this enthusiasm. Generals plan campaigns around it, and armies select and train for it. Civilians give out medals for it. And families, once the war is over and the guns have fallen silent, demand that young men put such enthusiasm somewhere, anywhere else other than centrally in their lives. Bottle it back up and stick that enthusiasm for combat and for being with your friends in combat back on the shelf where it belongs, and return to the role of son, brother, husband, boyfriend, or father. Because living a civilian life, where most things are not considered to be consequential, and where people understand philosophically that they can, quote-unquote, get killed crossing the street walking their doggy, but no one really spiritually behaves at that level of awareness, because living in a materialistic postmodern world where there is only a warped theology of suffering and where lip service is given to the warrior ethos, because so few serve in a military capacity and even fewer in a combat capacity, because it's so hard to talk about all those dynamics out loud without sounding like an immoral weirdo. It's just easier to admit the truth quietly, that young men lay down their lives for their friends, and then conveniently backburner all the implications of such a profound admission. Until, of course, we need young men to fight, to kill, and to die in the next war. And there will always be a next war. And well, that's it for me. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. there are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.